You're listening to an extract of the Leader podcast. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. From the Evening Standard in London, I'm David Marsland, and this is The Leader.
We're now going to pause questions, and I would like to invite the host to join me in a moment of reflection. Today marks 1 year since the Prime Minister addressed the nation and asked us all to stay at home to combat the spread of coronavirus.
Speaker Lindsay Hoyle paused the House of Commons at midday to remember those who have died from COVID-19 1 year on from lockdown.
As I say, nobody ever could have envisaged the numbers across the world that's been lost and the sacrifice that this country's played. But as I say, a big thank you also goes to the NHS workers, also to those who've been involved to make this country tick over, whether it's transport, whether it's in shops. It is important to us all. So what I would say is, can we now please stand as I invite members to stand for a 1 minute silence.
Around the country, flags flew at half-mast and people stopped to take a moment of reflection, such as the paramedics at the London Ambulance Service, whose Chief Executive Gareth Emerson says was hit hard by the infection.
It is a life-changing experience that we're all going through, and I think it'll be a while before we can truly process what that means. But for the organisation, for the London Ambulance Service, it's obviously been a major, major challenge. We've been busier than we've ever been in the last 12 months. We've had to put more ambulances out on the road, answer more calls in both 999 and 111, and respond to more patients than we've ever had to before.
In London, nearly 15,000 people have died from coronavirus. The infection is still with us, so lockdown is still here. Over the last 12 months, that measure to protect us has had its own effect on the capital, one that will last for years. The Evening Standard's Jonathan Prynn is here. And Jonathan, there's a report out today from the Centre for Economics and Business Research, and it really shows how hard this city has been hit by lockdown, doesn't it?
It really does, David, yes. London has borne the brunt of it for all sorts of reasons, but primarily because it's so dependent. I think maybe we didn't even appreciate this until the pandemic hit, but it's so dependent on that daily stream of commuters who come in every day and spend money in shops, restaurants, bars, etc., etc. But perhaps even more importantly, the 20 million foreign tourists who come to London every year, central London in particular, and spend huge amounts of money, huge numbers of billions. All that has gone, all of it. Most of the commuters have gone as well. And that's dealt a really huge blow to the economics of central London in particular, the West End and the city in particular.
So you've written that it's more than £50 billion that has been lost in London over the last year. And you say that that's the equivalent of the entire GDP of Bulgaria that's gone. I mean, how do we recover from that?
I think it's going to be tough. And in fact, a separate report which came out from the GLA yesterday, where they've sort of crunched the numbers looking into the future, and they drew up 3 different scenarios of recovery. And it looks like almost under any scenario, there's going to be a degree of long-term scarring to the London economy. Most forecasters now think it's likely that the old 5-day-a-week commuting model is dead, is gone forever. And the question is whether we'll get back 80% of our commuter days or our worker days in central London, 50%, 40%. No one knows, but everyone seems agreed it's extremely unlikely it's going to be 100%. At the same time, how long is it going to take before we get back to 20 million foreign tourists a year in London? I mean, that'll be down to virtually zero this year. So for the foreseeable future, there are going to be very substantial headwinds facing the central London economy.
And if the commute is effectively dead, as you said there, Jonathan, it's going to take a lot of those, particularly, I'd guess, retail jobs with it. They're dead too.
I think that's right. I mean, traditional retail was in a terrible death spiral anyway, long before we'd even heard of COVID. COVID has brought forward trends by a decade, some people are saying. And unlike hospitality, which has also been badly affected but will probably bounce back, retail ain't going to be bouncing back anytime soon. In fact, it's probably the likes of Debenhams and House of Fraser and these businesses that have been so bad, and Topshop, of course, so badly affected through the sort of combination of the move to online and accelerated by COVID. Those jobs are dead and buried.
Is there room for new industries in London? If we look a year from now, will things be different?
I think that's the hope. I mean, London does have this incredible sort of hybrid vigor and vitality because it's always been this extraordinary, great global melting pot and crossroads. I think areas like life sciences and certainly what they call the sort of flat white economy, tech, life sciences, culture, that's probably where the future is for London and London growth. And that sort of is actually much less dependent on the traditional 726 from Godalming that sort of financial services and some of the other big London industries are dependent on.
When this lockdown was announced 1 year ago, Jonathan, did you expect this to happen?
No, not at all. Maybe there were a few kind of learned epidemiologists who thought, yeah, we'll still be in lockdown a year on. But I think, like most people, I thought, oh gosh, this is painful. But come June, July, it'll be over and we can move on and get our lives back. I don't think anyone saw the severity and duration of the second wave, which really began pretty much when the schools went back in September, and here we are not far off April and we're still in it. So yeah, it's a very, very sobering thought that here we are a year on. Fortunately, we do seem to be getting on top of the medical crisis, hopefully for good. But the economic crisis, especially for central London, is really only just beginning, I think.